Fanlo. Welcome back to Medspa Trends TV. I'm so excited to have Shannon Seeberan with you. And Shannon is one of the co-founders and general manager of strategic partnerships and client services. So if you're investing in this model to implement into your location, she's going to be your point of contact here and take very, very good care of everything you need there. There's so many different sides of Cloud Medspas, whether you have a traditional med spa, a traditional medical practice, or something else going on. You want to implement this in your existing location. We're going to go into tactics of what comes first, second, third, etc. Let's say you don't have a location. Let's say you just have a dream and a vision of hosting this brilliant medical spa suites model in your region, then what you need to do first, second, third, and how it works. So with that said, Shannon, first, I'd love to have you go into what excited you about Cloud Medspas, and then also your role, your background a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that lovely introduction. I have been a part of this team for almost 4 years now. It has been a lot of fun to be a part of something that you feel like is really creating an opportunity, a solution that is fully transparent, and it's a win for all players. We're not eliminating anyone and as far as who this can work for. And so it's a lot of fun bringing something to the table, I think, in an industry where there's been a lot of the same as far as capital management, handling of who's profiting from this business. And so this sort of allows much more access and entry into ownership, which is exciting. My background, prior to being here, I had my own consulting business where I was supporting existing private practice physicians with converting more of their patient base over to aesthetics, not just acquiring new clients for aesthetics, but primarily working with dermatology, medical dermatology practices, and getting their entire team invested, their entire office invested in the growth of their business, as there's not a lot of time in the day for a lot of private practice physicians to contribute to their business growth, to their management of their staff, and to plan long-term, even short-term. After working a bunch of derm offices, especially, there are so many last-minute appointments coming into those offices that you're just trying to keep up with the flow. So being able to add value with private practice physicians and really turn over and add a cash-based business into their specialty was big and easy to do. And living in Silicon Valley, I wanted to take it to the next level, see what else I could apply this knowledge of this specific industry to continue to help our clients grow their business in a successful way, where obviously this industry is expanding in multiple numbers every year. So there's a ton of opportunity for everyone involved.
So how would you nutshell Cloud Medspas before we dig in? How would you just nutshell what Cloud Medspas is?
Sure. I always ask for the 5-second elevator pitch. I think it's a real estate opportunity to leverage your space, your biggest asset, and to earn more revenue. If you already own a location, you are clearly potentially not maximizing the available space in that location. And you could generate an additional revenue source for your location, your practice, your med spa.
Okay. And so that can apply whether they're renting or whether they own the space. You're just
Correct.
getting a higher return on investment per square foot.
Exactly. You already have the overhead costs, so you might as well tap into more potential revenue from that.
Okay. So now tell us a little bit about the Cloud Medspas offering, and if someone already has a location, what they do first, second, and third. How does that work?
What I initially do when I meet with our prospective clients is figure out what space is available, what space is being utilized. Is it one room? Is it two rooms? Is it one room 3 days a week for 2 hours? So we figure out what's the maximum hours per month that you have space available. And a lot can be done with minimal space. This does not require a large square footage. And so once we realize, do we have 100 hours of rental space available per month? Do we have 50? We back into it that way and we look at the potential revenue opportunity. What does this mean from a practitioner standpoint? If you have 80 hours available a month, how many potential practitioners could be in your space, leveraging that space? We understand the data required for visualization because we have our own brick and mortars that we own, and we've done provider acquisition at those locations for 4 years. So we know what it takes. We know how practitioners tend to work in the space and use the space.
Sorry, are all of those locations called Vansanity?
The 2 locations that we own are called Vansanity.
Okay,
Boston,
and those are corporate stores that prove the concept.
Those are our test kitchens. That's what we call them. and we have been running those locations, Boston, for 4 years now. So we understand what we are providing as a platform is not a theoretical, here's what we think is a great idea. We've actually been implementing this platform for 4 years. We know what it takes to acquire practitioners. We know what practitioners need to be successful at a location. And we know what type of revenue that you can generate given how many utilization hours you have available at your site as well.
That's fantastic. And then also, I'm curious too, is this something that someone can see that it's working and they can scale up, or does it help a physician who wants to somehow transition out of the traditional insurance billing and cost justify, making that big switch?
Completely. It helps with opening a second location. It makes you build in an immediate opportunity that can start generating revenue for you quicker than you acquiring the patient clientele you would traditionally need to get over time to fill a space. So it's a great way to subsidize scaling your practice, opening another location. It's a great way if you wanted to dial back as a physician and also reduce your amount of hours. It's a great way to still generate potential revenue for your location. It's also a great way for med spa owners who are frustrated with the headaches of employee management, of marketing costs to acquire patients, to pivot and now work under the rental model. Instead of having 3 employees, they could have potentially 30 practitioners renting. And it's a healthy revenue stream with less overhead required.
That's great. So it's a brilliant, very high return on investment salon suite kind of model, but for aesthetics.
Yes, but for aesthetics. And the reason we're different from a solo salon suites is we are not just a space. We are locations that also offer competitive product pricing. So the practitioners at our locations are getting great product to do their procedures. So their margins are extremely high for them.
Okay, I'm going to call the physician office or the existing traditional medical spa, I'm going to call them the host.
Okay.
If the host wants to implement your model in their location, how does that even begin? Where do they begin to implement this?
Sure. So we can turn it on in 2 weeks. So it starts by having that initial conversation. We set them up with the software. We go through the entire software, figuring out how many rooms, how many hours, which days. So we structure it that is specific to their location. Keep noted that this is extremely fluid. If 1 week the physician wants to remove the availability, the host wants to remove the availability of a room or hours, they can do that. So it's under full control of the host at all times as far as the access to the space. That is under their control. But this setup process is very quick, getting their location established so that practitioners can start to go into the app and see the space is available in New York City or whatever market you're in. They can start the onboarding process themselves, and it can happen very quickly. So I usually tell people 1 to 2 weeks to get your location up and running. But most importantly is the onboarding process of us getting you familiar with the software, of getting the location specific to what your needs are.
Okay, so most ideally, from your perspective, since you're managing strategic partnerships and all the client services, the host services, it seems to me it's easiest if it's a medical location or someone, whoever the host is, can act as the medical director for the facility, because that cuts out a big issue, right? But the host doesn't have to be, they could be running any kind of business in a location and implement this, right?
Yeah, the necessity of being a medical director at a location is not needed. Obviously, the location host is a physician and doesn't want to take on that liability or that task. That's fine. We can find other medical directors with which to match prospective providers to. That's not a problem. It can be a lucrative opportunity for medical directors to take that on. And then there's the state by state regulations. As state by state, there's different regulations. Some states, nurse practitioners are allowed to be medical directors. So it allows for different pricing, a little bit more access for the practitioners. So the liability and the compliance of the host is completely unnecessary. The host is only able to see who's going to be in his space when, in what product they purchase. They have no visibility as to who is the patient and what procedure is happening. So that's what makes it completely HIPAA compliant, which is appreciated by a large percentage of our hosts who don't want to take on extra liability by onboarding this platform.
Okay, so you as the mothership, you're actually doing that matchmaking as a service, as a courtesy?
As a courtesy, we help. We obviously, once we get a host in a specific market, we saturate that market with just networking and make sure we know who the reps are in that market. We want them to be aware of what Cloud Medspas is, what service this location is offering prospective practitioners. We want to know who lead trainers are in that market, potential mentors. So we try to build a network of support for that specific host so that when practitioners come to their location, we can match potential practitioners with any specific need, tool, resource they need to be successful and thriving at that location.
That's great. So what I'm hearing so far is, number one, you're helping them optimize the revenue and profits per square foot that they have. Number two, you're helping them plug in to the people they might need and the resources they might need in order to set up as a med spa services suite.
Correct.
And then the third thing you'd be doing also is helping them stay compliant and manage those logistics as a support system, as a mentor to them as well, from the mothership perspective, correct?
Correct. It's an ongoing process that we are not a successful company unless our hosts are. And so this is an ongoing relationship, whether we're statusing weekly or monthly with all of our locations. We want to make sure your location is thriving, that the practitioners feel supported, and that the constant acquisition of practitioners is healthy in there and happening. And
Okay.
because we've been implementing this with our own locations, we know what that takes.
All right. And they're working under their own desired brand, their own rules,
Yes.
Otherwise, the
Yep.
little things that they want on to. Okay.
Correct.
And then how does it work? Now, I know in your model, which is absolutely brilliant, if I haven't said that
Thank
3,000
you.
times, that you have incredible buying power because you already have hundreds and hundreds of providers around the country, and that's only growing. So how does that buying power work, the subscription model with the equipment? Can you go into that a little bit as what kind of liability or burden there is on the host when it comes to physical supplies and also the equipment?
Again, it's about minimizing risk and overhead. A traditional med spa, if you own a med spa, you're carrying lots of product because you're trying to purchase a lot of product, obviously to negotiate lower product rates. And so a lot of the time you end up onboarding a lot of product. You're waiting to get reimbursed for procedures to happen so you can be reimbursed on products. So you're constantly paying it forward. Under this model, you are obviously set up, our hosts are set up as ship to, so they're getting the product directly from the manufacturer, but they're buying only one vials at a time. They're only buying the product that is in demand at that location. So they can see the practitioners in their space via the app and the software, what they're buying, and they just order the product as needed. Instead of carrying $40,000 of inventory in a potential storage room somewhere, you might be carrying $5,000 worth of product that is moving immediately. So you're not waiting these long terms for reimbursement.
That's great. And how does shipping work? Is it overnight? Is it, what have you
Yeah, great
negotiated?
question. Shipping tends to be 24 hours. Obviously, if you're placing an order like anything at 3 p.m. or 4 p.m., it's not going to be 20 hours, but 24 to 48 hours for sure.
That's great. And they don't want to screw
Yeah.
up with you. And
No,
how does it
they
work
don't.
on the equipment end of things when you're talking about aesthetics tech?
Yeah, so the equipment end, again, we want low risk opportunity. We don't want our hosts to take on additional investments for practitioners. They are no longer in the role of investing in other people's business, right? They want to support the practitioners in their space and give them the tools so that they're in their space more. And so when we have different contracts with different device manufacturers, so when a host comes to us and says, I've got 5 practitioners who are asking for a microneedling device, they say they can move this many procedures a month, we can support them and get a device on site at no upfront cost. What they will incur is a monthly subscription fee, which we offset and defer to the practitioners who are in the space. So each practitioner has a cost per use for that device. That accrued amount over the course of the month will basically cover the cost of that subscription or lease cost. That's the idea, so that the owner is not taking on additional costs and investments by putting more tools in the space.
I love that you're implementing a model that's not like a franchise, that we have this way of doing it. You're going to implement these pieces of equipment, blah, blah, blah. Because there is a chicken and the egg, and every market is so different too. So it sounds, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you're also customizing the equipment case by case as a collaboration. What are the needs? How can we get this paid for by whoever you're bringing in to be a provider into your host site? And you're not just implementing something cookie cutter.
Right. The right costs and the right investments are assigned to the right people, right? The practitioner is carrying, she's the win of the profitability of the procedure. So he or she should be obviously paying the cost to access and tap into an additional procedure, but they're not writing a six-figure check for that device. But they now are increasing their portfolio of procedures. They're going to be in your space more because instead of just injecting neurotoxin, now they're offering body sculpting or IPL. And so that's more hours for you because the practitioner is now doing more things. But it's about reducing risk in this traditional mindset that breaking into this business means taking out a giant loan, taking on a bunch of risk, buying expensive devices that are upgraded frequently. Meanwhile, you're still paying off the old one. So let's change the way we think about accessing this space. Let's get more hands touching different procedures and getting access to more procedures in a more efficient way.
Okay, if we can jump over to org chart a little bit. So whether someone has an existing location already or they're just looking at starting this Medspa Suites model, what does that org chart look like? Who do they need in that location?
That's a great question. Ideally, depending on who the host is, if they are a practitioner that's fully busy seeing patients all day or doing their own procedures, you definitely want someone that can be accountable for the administrative access of the software, who can just oversee and monitor who's going to be in the space, making sure that the product inventory is fulfilled, that we have the product for the practitioners when they're there. Also just making little things like the rooms need to be just tidied up in between practitioners, small things like that. But these are not messy procedures. There's very little to be done when in the rooms. As you get busier, having an actual site manager that is accountable for the efficiency of the space makes sense financially. So, but in the beginning, it's really just someone to oversee and be accountable for the software management and make sure that the practitioners have what they need. The patients come in and see their practitioner right away. Having someone to greet them is not a necessity because that experience is between the practitioner and their patient. It's great if you have a greeter, awesome, not a necessity. They are in there using the space and running their own business. So you do not need to micromanage the practitioner's experience. But at minimal, having someone part-time accountable for the software is good.
Okay. And we don't want to go into this too much in this segment because I do want to have another segment with you guys. I love you guys. That more from the practitioner viewpoint, what kind of friction you're taking away? What kind of hoops are you taking away from them getting into the business?
Sure.
Even, especially if they have a full-time job and they're trying to make this gig work.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, as part of the mothership, do you also make it easy for the host and the provider when it comes to, I'm assuming they need to get their own medical director, they need to get EMR, their own booking system? How's that separated from
Yeah,
the
and that's
host?
a whole part of the process of onboarding that we help our host with, right? Because that will be questions they are posed with when
Mhm.
they are onboarding the practitioner. And we have all the tools, again, in place for that. And it's just setting everyone up for success and making it consumable for everyone. Yes, there's a lot of different steps to take, but prioritizing what comes first is what we're very good at. Being able to refer practitioners to other practitioners who've been in their shoes before and can help them in this process. But we do have referrals, we do have matchmaking in place for medical directors, for malpractice insurance. It is not the responsibility of the host to control those contracts and set those contracts. Those are all between the practitioner and their medical director. Those are third-party separate relationships. As far as the matchmaking, that we can assist with, and that is very helpful for the acquisition of the practitioner.
Great. Do you help at all in streamlining the idiosyncrasies of each state? For instance, you might even get medical directors who qualify but haven't been a medical director before. Do you have maybe template contracts or something like that can streamline that for the practitioner and the director? Do you have a streamlined way, a way of helping both the medical director and the practitioner in getting that agreement together and keeping costs to a minimum for the practitioner state by state with all the little idiosyncrasies and streamlining that?
We can't pretend to know the idiosyncrasies of all 50 states. It's a lot. And the regulations in every state are so different. We can support by having knowledge as far as typical medical director fees, opportunities to match medical directors with practitioners. But those relationships, because they're separate, how the medical director structures his contract with the practitioner, that's between them. Because they're not employees of ours, we don't meddle in that. And we haven't seen a necessity in us needing to support that process either.
Oh, okay. All right. That's good. And
Yeah.
I'm assuming you have good resources you can send them to, very well-priced attorneys or paralegals who know what they're doing. Do you get
Well,
involved
as
with
far
that at
as
all?
not with legal, no. And there's very little legal involvement. Malpractice for our practitioners is very inexpensive. It's not a highly litigious space. That's
Mhm.
why it's inexpensive. And the malpractice, the hosts do not need to take on additional malpractice because they're not taking on additional liability. As far as an additional legal support and insurance support, it's very minimal. It's just the practitioner specifically needing their own malpractice, which is quite affordable for them.
Okay. All right. Let's move to the individual who doesn't even have a location, who may have just finished training and has been a nurse or something in the traditional medical space. They just finished training on cosmetic injection or aesthetics tech, and they're ready to start their med spa. Where do you start with someone who doesn't even have a location yet?
So, location to be a host, is it?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So I typically tell them start to seek opportunities in your market that are 8 to 1,000 square feet, rooms that are where you can get potentially 2 to 3 exams. Don't start big, start small. I want the biggest problem in the first 12 to 18 months is for you to expand or get a potential second location. That would be a great problem. But with 2 exam rooms, 3 exam rooms, you could potentially house 20 to 20 practitioners easily. And so that's a lot of people in a small amount of space based on how the utilization model is leveraged. So that's really the first place to start is what overhead do you foresee yourself taking on with that sort of square footage in your market? Secondly, it's find a location that is near other med spas. You are not trying to generate traffic from other patients. Your client is now the practitioner. You're trying to attract the practitioner to your location because it's an easy pivot for them to make, to change from working at the med spa half a mile away to moving to yours and earning the full profitability opportunity of their business.
That's really interesting. If you didn't
Mhm.
hear that, rewind and listen again. That's really interesting. And the other thing I'm curious about, if someone doesn't have a location, they don't need a lot of space, this will cost justify. And you're saying so many practitioners in such a tiny space because they're all in there just by the hour, sharing the space and sharing everything. That's a beautiful model. And then is there anything else that is really specific that the host would need to make sure that space has, or what gets implemented?
Obviously, the aesthetics of anything helps. So when you have a beautiful space, it's helpful when you show your space to a potential practitioner for them to visualize themselves conducting their business there. But at a bare minimum, the space needs a proper exam chair that reclines to treat the patients. And that's probably the biggest expense is to get the exam chairs in place. But that's really it. You don't need a large waiting room because there isn't a holdover of patients. So use the space efficiently, use the square footage for exam rooms, not for large waiting areas. Because when practitioners are in the space, they are very efficient. They're not loitering. They come in, they treat their clients, and they leave because they are paying by the hour, the 2 hours, the 3 hours that they're there.
Okay, so whether someone has a host has an existing space or they're opening up a new space, do you have somewhat of a checklist of that you provide them?
We do. And we can review all the specific needs, what the bare minimums of what practitioners need to thrive in a space. We provide all of that.
Okay, and that I'm assuming that ties into your buying power as well, that where they could get the equipment at really good price kinds of
Completely. We
things.
have all the
Okay.
resources. That's why we like to say we can support with every step of the process, and it's prioritizing every step of the process so that it's easy to implement. We don't want someone feeling overwhelmed in the beginning. So we really make it a very easy and accessible process as well for our clients.
Okay. Have you had any scenarios of anyone doing the groundwork first before they secure space, of maybe getting the attention of practitioners and doing conditional closing, or have you seen that happen in that direction?
We see people starting conversations to see if this is of potential interest to prospective providers in their market. And we always recommend that. Start talking to practitioners, ask them if this is an opportunity they would be interested in taking advantage of. But we highly recommend having the space when you're ready to pull the trigger, because people, when they want to commit to something, they want to see that it actually exists. So to not have a space, but theoretically be talking about, I could be having a Cloud Med Spa, it doesn't make sense until you can close the loop and actually show them the space and provide that opportunity as well.
Okay. All right. That makes a lot of sense. So we're getting close to wrapping this up. I want to summarize a little bit that whether someone has space, existing space, medical office, doesn't matter, even it could be any kind of business, as long as you have space, or doesn't have space. Number one, you're working on helping them with the logistics of what to do first, second, and third to get that space prepared and optimizing the revenue per square foot of that space. And the second thing is providing them any kind of resources. So it could be human beings they may need, equipment they may need, connections to supplies, deeply discounted supplies because of your buying power on the equipment end. You're also offering a very unique model that you've negotiated with the suppliers that's more of a subscription model, correct? That's a big
Correct. Yeah. So access to devices, there's a lot of independent injectors out there. I would say a large percentage of the market is just injecting, and the people that can afford, and the businesses and the investors that can afford devices, is a very small niche. It's plastic surgeons, it's med spas, because it's a huge capital investment. So to be able to offer access to these devices at your location, where typically these practitioners would not be able to offer these procedures, is a huge opportunity for provider acquisition.
Okay, that's great. And then you also have case studies available from the Vansanity corporate stores, we'll call them, one in Boston, one in Dallas, correct?
Correct. And we have, at this point, we have existing Cloud Medspa host case studies as well. So happy to share that information with prospective clients.
Okay, that's great. I'm sure everyone has so many more questions, but we'll eventually get them all, and including something that host can use to explain the model to the practitioner to make that as easy as possible. I'm sure you have all of those
We've
resources.
got all that. Yep.
You thought of
Completely.
everything.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right, Shannon, any other parting words? How does someone get in touch with you? Anything at all you want to wrap with?
I would just say, like you said in the beginning, each specific host potential is completely customized to them. All of your scenarios are completely personal and different. There is not one blanket way of implementing this. So I think having an introductory call and getting informed as to whether or not this is a fit for you and understanding the financials of it better is just a good use of time. And so I highly recommend for listeners to reach out, email me, Shannon@cloudmedspas.com, or even text me directly, 773-398-1999.
Okay, that's great. And then just to also clarify, in addition to the IP, the intelligence, the experience, the support that you're getting to set this up, at the end of the day, Cloud Medspas is a very astute SaaS company. It's a very astute technology company that helps streamline everything that you're responsible for as the operator, as the host. So just to keep that in mind, that the software systems and things that you're implementing is really so you can manage your practitioners and the logistics you're responsible for as far as the practitioners go. But from a practitioner viewpoint, the contracts, the documentation that they need, that's on them. That's separate from what you need to manage with your software system. And they have it all set as an all-in-one system.
Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. That was fun.
Thanks, Erica.
Yeah, pleasure. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye.